Welcome to a landmark occasion in the life of the Financial Policy Council. Today, we're not filming for optics. We're bearing witness to the emergence of a new generation of leadership. Principled, intelligent, and unshakably committed to truth. With me are Olivia and Logan Johns, the first members of our Rising Leaders tier. They are not here because they are my children. Well, they are my children, but that's not the only reason they're here. They're here because they represent exactly what this country and this council need. Minds that see through the fog of slogans, hearts that beat with civic duty, and the discipline to lead before they're asked. This Rising Leadership tier is not just a youth division, it is a structural rebirth. Olivia and Logan stand at the frontier, not as placeholders for potential, but as voices of a generation we intend to empower, not patronize. Let us begin. So, would you please introduce yourself, Olivia?
I'm Olivia Johns. I'm a rising junior at Marymount Manhattan College in New York, and there I'm a double major with dance and politics and human rights.
Great. Logan?
My name's Logan Johns, son of Dr. Johns. I am a pre-med major, rising senior at the Penn State University in State College, Pennsylvania.
Okay, here's some difficult questions for you. Hope you're ready. Number one, what would your future self thank you for saying on camera today? Olivia, please.
I think my future self would thank me for being a 19-year-old that gets this opportunity to advocate for voices that want to be heard but aren't able to be heard. I think that I'm very lucky to be in this position, and a lot of people my age want to be but can't. And I think that I'd be grateful, and I will be grateful, that I can start a conversation and that I can be the one that's saying things that everybody else wants to say but can't.
Great. Logan?
I think exactly what Olivia said is 100% correct. Putting your voice out there is so important for so many people, and students especially, because as a person who has taught students as a learning assistant, the students that don't get their point of view out there and shared feel disrespected and feel alone. So being able to be part of a community that allows my opinion to be viewed is so important to me.
Logan, in 10 years, what do you want America to look like? And what role do you hope to have in this future America?
Well, great question, first of all.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, it is tough. So as a pre-med student, I plan to go into medical studies eventually. It might not be next year, could be the one after that. But I plan to help people to the best of my ability. And I want America to be a place where everyone feels safe and welcome. That's one of, America's virtues. And one way to do that is through medicine and through health. So currently the hospital situation is a little messed up. There's corruption, there is money laundering, I'm sure, and insurance is all over the place. So as a representative of the FPC and as a student, I would love to participate by fixing the corruption in hospitals and healthcare.
Yeah.
It's a pretty tall order, Logan.
I know.
I would all myself.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that I am a very privileged 19-year-old, mostly white woman in America, and I think that I have a lot of gratitude for where I am today. But there are so many other people that don't have it like me, and also so many other people that have it a lot better than me. And I think that America as a whole in the country, we're not equal. We're very separated, and I think that if I can, with my experience, future experience in law, and with my experience as a dancer right now in the entertainment world, I want to do as much as I can to make America, like Logan said, a place where people can feel safe, but also a place where it's not hard to do something that you want to do. And I think that right now it is really hard to go out and pursue a dream, and it is really hard to get an education, and it is really hard to go after something you want. And I want to be able to change that, or at least help people feel like they can make that next step to get there.
Excellent answers. Thank you. So, Logan, I need a little clarification here. You had mentioned something, as did Olivia, about coming from privilege versus not coming from privilege and what assumptions are made. Could you kind of clarify that for folks?
Yeah. So another important point when it comes to assumptions is that assumptions are very similar to pressure, is that if you grew up, for example, with privilege, if you grew up with wealth, you are assumed that you will succeed in life. You could mess up, you can not work as hard as you may have to, and every gap will be filled. You don't have that pressure of success. However, there's the opposite end of the spectrum. If you grew up with poverty and not as much opportunity as somebody else did, you might be assumed, somebody else might assume that you will fail. And that is a pressure that hurts students and growing people so much. And there should be a way to, as Olivia said, she said entitlement and equalizing in America, which is a great point. So I think we need to figure out some way to get rid of those assumptions to equalize people.
So would an example be, theoretically, if you were studying for the MCATs and you had a lot of time to do so, and your father called you up continually to make sure you weren't playing video games and instead studying, something like that, maybe what you're suggesting is that this rising tier would create some sort of a mentorship program to help those that don't have the privileges that people in your situation do have, that you could perhaps project and share that back with folks that don't have it, like a volunteer program and a mentoring program to help kids to be successful.
I absolutely think so.
Yeah. There needs to be equal opportunity for everybody. And it's not fair to say that people with wealth are going to just think everything's a success. And it's not fair to say that people that are poor don't think that they can do it, because I know so many people from both spectrums that have very similar thought processes. And yeah, I think that if we can do something to equal the play field in general for everything, that's going to help. Yeah.
And you mentioned the mentorship or volunteer program. That's a perfect opportunity. Students want something to do. They want something to get themselves out there. An internship, a volunteer, mentor program. So if we can offer that with the rising leadership tier or the FPC, that would be an amazing thing.
And in the heart of the city, I mean, finding ways for people that want to dance, that can't dance. Finding ways that people want to learn about politics and law to do that. Yeah, it can work for any career path.
Excellent. Well said. Olivia, which assumptions do you believe your generation must unlearn to rebuild trust, freedom, and unity in America?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I kind of was talking about it earlier, but we're not equal as a country. We're very far from that. And I think the people that have it a lot easier than others have become very entitled. Not everybody, but just as a general term. And I think that it's going to be really important for us to take any entitlement, any extra luck, any extra opportunities that we're able to easily have and make it available for other people. So we can learn to break the pattern of having it an easy way out and being entitled, being selfish. I think as a country as a whole, we need to do that because we're very entitled as a country. America is very entitled, and it hasn't really gotten better, in my opinion, growing up. And I've only seen it more as I get older and become more mature. So I don't know if that answers completely, but we'll give it off to Logan now.
Well, actually, instead, why don't you
Yeah.
capitalize and capitulate on her answer and answer this? How do you maintain clarity and purpose in a world saturated with noise, ideology, and curated falsehoods? Logan Johns.
Perfect question. That was actually going to be my answer for the previous question, was related to an assumption that we need to overcome. So maintaining clarity and purpose is very difficult if you don't know what you're going to do. If you're an upcoming freshman in college, you're an undecided major, you don't know where your life wants to be eventually. But if you can put yourself in other people's shoes and see from their perspective, then you can understand where you would want to be eventually. Because if I can see other people, I know what they want, maybe. I can know what I would want. So I think an assumption that needs to be overcome that would also relate to clarity and purpose is being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and having the assumption that people don't see you. People don't understand what you want.
Yeah.
That's not true. I believe that everybody can see other people. It's just you have to be able to realize it yourself.
Yeah, I think backing up on that also, working with students ever since I was like 10 years old in dance, and I used to teach karate with Logan. I think we see a lot of times that people won't be able to take criticism, and they aren't able to take something with a grain of salt and respect it and also take action with that. And I think that's something that we also can learn to unlearn in this new coming age. And I think that Logan and I here in future of FPC, getting other students involved, we can really make a change of students coming in and trying to break that pattern of entitlement and of criticism.
Excellent. Excellent answer. Okay. Spotlight on Logan. What makes you trust or mistrust major American institutions like government, media, education, or finance?
If I'm a student, and I am, and I'm taking a class and I can't relate to the teacher, I don't understand what they're trying to tell me because they're not interested and there's no connection between professor and student, or, for example, government, media, and person. There is no way for me to understand the material if I can't relate to the person telling me what's going on. So that's why I can't just look at one website. I have to go to a video and see what somebody's talking about or converse with my friend or my peer. It just is all about relation and connection between sources.
So you come from a place of mistrust or you come from a place of trust?
I tend to trust people and I tend to trust things, and that does tend to backfire. So it's better to look at things more neutrally at first and then develop trust.
Great. Media, Olivia, trust,
Yeah.
mistrust.
I mean,
Go.
I'm working for social media here, and I have a very big social media presence, so I think I can definitely speak on that. Uh, Social media, you can't fully trust. I'm not gonna lie, I get most of all my news and information from social media. I'm not a news watcher. I tend to think that actually a lot of news has polarization and also has a lot of fake news.
Well, let me pause
Yeah.
you there. Earlier in our discussion, you had said that you don't trust social media either. So if there are same misunderstandings,
Yeah.
mistruths, and falsehoods in the media at large, why would social media be what you go to?
Yeah, that's a good question. News for me in my generation, mostly, it's just not something we look for. I can't speak for everyone, but I know, like, I don't think you really watch the news. I don't watch the news. All my friends, we don't really watch the news. So I wouldn't look to that. And when I have looked to that, I've noticed it's very polarized, either one side or the other. I haven't really found a non-biased news, at least with my experience. In social media, my generation is very into social media. We look at it for everything. I mean, TikTok has gone crazy viral with all political news, all government news, everything. Even just little day-to-day things, and as well with Instagram, all of them. And I will say that I do look for it to get initial news, but when I say I don't trust it, it's because, again, people can just put anything out there, and a lot of people, I see them just repost and repost and repost, but no action is really taken. They just repost things, and from that, you can't really understand fully if it's true or not. So what I would suggest, and I think Logan is speaking on this as well, is doing your own research. So after I will look at social media and I'll look through accounts and I'll look through comments, then I will go online and do my own research, because from that I can gather bits and pieces from everything and come to conclusion.
So you're suggesting that you come from a place of let's trust to a degree, but fact check and then go back, similar to what Logan recommended in regard to education.
And a lot of trust also just comes from what you believe as well, rather than just looking at news. You also have to have an opinion for yourself.
Very good. Okay, so Logan, a little creativity here. You have godlike power. You're able to reimagine one institution for the 21st century. Where would you begin?
One institution. I would start in education because I think it's highly flawed, and that's a controversial opinion. But I think education could absolutely be improved in a multitude of ways. And as I just did a brief internship, basically teaching professors and staff how to teach students from a student perspective. And I was a learning assistant there, and they used me as kind of a student to bounce ideas off and whatnot. And it was so interesting to see from a perspective of a professor or staff or instructor how they don't connect with the students. And there needs to be some sort of institutional change in education or the Department of Education in where students have a connection to their professors. They have some way to speak to them, to, communicate. It's tough to develop an idea out of nowhere, and that's what you're asking me to do. But I think we can do something in a small step manner, something that would just allow, a little discussion post with a professor, for example.
Yeah.
That's a small example, but
But I gave you godlike powers.
exactly.
So you're
In
not
a
going to
big
do a little
picture,
bit. What you get. So you'd like to completely reimagine education.
Can I tag along with what you say?
Depends. Did he have any place to start? You're reimagining all of education. What's it going to look like? What's it going to look like?
I definitely think institutions like schools, college, middle school, all those, absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with the structure. I think there needs to be some sort of, as I said, institutional change to develop a website, a software that students, everything is technology now, so that students can use to become closer with their professors. Because that's how students learn, is with relation. Because you have to be able to communicate with somebody one-on-one. You can't just look at a screen. There's no contact there. So I don't know how I would change it institutionally. I would have to go step by step, test things out. But I would probably start with some sort of software that allows professors and students
Like
as well as
maybe
staff.
more interaction, like
Exactly.
able to have more personal time, asking questions to the instructor, perhaps in a
100%.
blog-like fashion or something like that. Okay. Libby, you want to add to that?
I'll say I was at the University of Arizona, as you know, my freshman year of college, and that's a huge university. And Logan's at a pretty big university as well. And then I transferred into a very small community. And the difference between relationships with professors and student is outrageous. In Arizona, you have so many students, the lectures are like 300 kids, and you can't have that relationship. I never had that relationship with any of my professors. Obviously, my dance instructors, I did a little bit more, but when it comes to academics, I couldn't have that. And here at Marymount in the city, it's so different. I feel like I can really connect. One of my classes, it was a politics class, 9 people. We would spend the whole hour and a half just talking about what's going on in the world and communicating with each other. So I think if there's a way, I don't know exactly how, with big institutions and schools that you can have a similar connection, I think that's a good start. I don't know exactly how, but I think that's why we're also here for the FPC.
Maybe you're talking about similar things that we've discussed in regard to medical reform, that you're suggesting that large universities, they get to a point in which they're no longer functional, and so that perhaps there should be some, in a perfect world, way to carve those universities up into smaller levels so that you have a better teacher to student ratio and more interaction and have a college-like feel at a university level.
Yeah.
Is that maybe what you're trying to say?
I think absolutely. Additionally, one point would be hiring more middlemen, learning assistants or teaching assistants, just so it's not one professor teaching a large class. Because having that like intermediate from student to professor is so important for students that are trying to learn.
Yeah. And one more thing before, I don't know if there's more questions, but
We'll do one more.
yeah, with education, I think that we really need to keep educating. I think that for the future of our department, of our administration, I think we really need to make sure that everybody is hearing history of everything that happened in the past and not limiting history between, I know we're not getting political at all. That's not what the FPC is about, but it's more about how we can help in the future. And I think that education needs to be a forefront where we're learning everything that happened, good or bad, uncomfortable or comfortable, because that's how us students are going to be able to communicate and learn.
So you're suggesting that at this point you're experiencing some censorship of history?
Mhm. I think that Logan and I are at that age where they're starting to, and kids that are younger than us are starting to get less of a full education. Yeah.
Very important. Okay, so Olivia, what does ethical leadership look like to you? And also, why do you think it's so rare today?
Yeah. I mean, I was talking about this earlier, but criticism, taking constructive criticism, is something that I don't think leaders really do that often anymore. I think that once you get to a professional role where you have a lot of power, you have a lot of respect, you have a lot of everything, I think it's hard to take constructive criticism and to think that you still have things to learn from. And that's not something that should be as a leader quality. I think you should always be somebody that is willing to learn because you never are too old to learn. And that's something that as a dancer, I'm working on as well. When I'm teaching, I always look at littles and see how can I learn from them. And I think that's such a such a huge aspect in leadership. I'm lucky I grew up at a studio where I'm always learning, I'm always teaching, and I think that goes the same with academics. I'm lucky I grew up in a small town, and you guys, you and mom really helped me learn and, showed me that I can lead with gratitude. And I don't think that's something that ethical leaders are doing anymore.
So, Olivia, what about the concept that if a leader is too open to taking criticism from everyone below her or him, that that leader then is perceived as weak and someone who can't manage and can't handle without the requests or the input of all what could be considered subordinates? So how do you answer to
Well,
that?
obviously there has to be a balance, but I think something that's wrong with our system is that we see that as weakness. We shouldn't see that as weakness. But obviously there needs to be some sort of balance where a leader is knowledgeable and more knowledgeable in a sense than those not leaders. I don't want to say below them because they're not below them, it's just a different role. So there should be a balance, but also seeing them as weak because they take criticism is false. Yeah, in my opinion.
Great. So last question, not that question. You get a different, more difficult one.
Sure.
What's one policy, economic, educational, or financial that you think would truly unleash your generation's potential?
Well, this is something that I actually don't know. So this is a good point to talk about. I would 100% advise for any sort of policy advocating for openness, honesty, truth, and communication, because those are all attributes that are missing in most leaders and governments and societies, even in classrooms. It's so difficult for there to be a good amount of communication and openness between, for example, professor and student. So I don't know how that would be incorporated into a policy. I'm not a very political or even government associated fellow, so I don't really know what's going on up there. But that's a problem because there's not enough communication and openness of information shared to the people. I have to go, search something up and find, because I don't know what they're doing up there. It's really tough to gather information. So that I don't know what I would incorporate.
Yeah.
That's
I
okay.
mean,
Phone a friend.
I think the FPC can really do that change if everyone works together and if everyone has that honesty and we talk about good and bad and we talk about ways to improve and just council in New York. I think that it can really shape the future. And I think that that's one reason Logan and I are here, is because we want to bring our generation into this community. We want to show that we are ready to make change and we want to make change. So I don't know. I think that is something that I wouldn't say we have a policy right now, but we could be one.
So you're suggesting that although it may be viewed that your generation doesn't necessarily care about change, perhaps it's just that you don't have a way to actually exact or execute that change, and maybe having folks in your generation be part of the Financial Policy Council and bringing those ideas to a place where they can actually be put into either policy writing or effectivity would make you happy
Yeah,
and make you functional.
anything. And also, I would honestly say that our generation is one of the loudest generations and wants to make that change, but isn't given the power to. I think they want to make change. I think they're advocating for it, but they're not able to.
You've got TikTok. Isn't that enough?
Well,
Okay.
I mean, you would think so. But yeah, I mean, I think that our generation should be the ones that are, and it doesn't have to be policy making. It doesn't have to be, but little things like leadership roles, like communication in schools, things that we can do now are going to change our future.
Very well said.
Yeah.
One way to gather, as you said, we're the loudest generation, but a lot of people don't respect that. A lot of people in powerful positions think the younger people are less educated, which, all right, that's fair. Some people are. It's just a tough generalization to make, because the loud voices may be the advice that politicians and government need. They need somebody to tell them everybody's perspective. And gathering perspectives is how you create advice and how you create new policies. So I think if we had some way to communicate with the people up there, such as an advising council that gathered everyone's perspective, that would be beneficial.
Okay, so have you ever been to a concert? You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
the
Been to
band
several.
walks off stage and then everybody lights their lighters or whatever, their little electronic lighters. So the lighters got lit. Now we're back. One more question.
Oh,
So we're going to do one more. So, Olivia, how is the Financial Policy Council, from what you've seen so far? And we're new again, we're rebirthed, we're like a phoenix rising from the ashes here. How is it different from any other youth or civic program that you have seen?
yeah. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know too much yet. This is my first time being here. This is my first event with the FPC. I can't fully answer that, but what I can say is that I've never been able to be in this position before, and with the FPC I am. And I'm lucky to have you as my father, so it was nice because,
You sure as hell are.
I was given this opportunity, but I will say that the FPC has been very welcoming so far, and it's hard to want a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old on board on something, and the fact that you guys are open to that and see that we want to make change, and I think that's a big
Well,
initiative.
you can thank our Vice President Stanford Silverman, who came up with the idea
Thank you,
of
Stanford Silverman.
the whole concept of
Yeah.
expanding this to rising leaders?
Because, yeah, I will say I don't know too much yet about the FPC. I will learn a lot tonight, but I will say that the fact that I'm here does mean something.
You've heard the clarity and the courage of Logan and Olivia Johns. What they represent is not novelty, is necessity. The Rising Leaders tier is not a gesture, it's a declaration. America's rebirth must begin with those who are not yet jaded, not yet captured, not yet beat down by the world, not compromised. Olivia and Logan are not the exception. They're the beginning. And it's our job not to guard the gates, but to hand them the keys. This is the next chapter of the Financial Policy Council, and it begins now.